Okay.
Oh,
Just let me know once we are live.
Okay. Are you there? Okay, you guys are live.
oh.
Good morning, everybody. We're just waiting for the time to start. So if you'll just bear with us for a couple minutes. Ra, I see that we're not showing all cameras at the same time, huh?
Okay, Karen says good morning. I'm just trying to see the camera setting.
Morning, everybody. We're just waiting for 10:30. We'll start in a little bit as we just wait for our live numbers to grow a bit. Ro, are you able to get us all up?
Yeah, just hold on, Ross. I'm just trying to check the settings.
Good morning to those of you who've only just joined us. We're just waiting for a little bit longer for our live viewers to join us. So if you'll just be patient and hang on a few minutes. There you go, Ro. Thank you. You've managed to get us all on.
Perfect. Brian says good morning.
Morning, everybody that's only just joined. Again, it is 10:30. We are due to start, but we're just waiting for a couple more live numbers to join. And then we will start our session of our webinar. So we'll give it another minute or two. Okay, guys, I think that we are going to get started and get the session underway. Thank you to those of you who are joining us live here this morning. We are going to be taping this session. It is going to sit on our Facebook page, and you can log on at any time and come back and view it. It will also be distributed to our database and also sent to our CEIF colleagues across the country. But nice to have those of you that are here with us, as I say, live this morning. So let me start off by introducing myself. My name is Ross Levine. I'm the Managing Director of CEIF, Atlantic Seaboard and City Bowl. And I'm very lucky to have a great panel here with me today. And I'm going to start off by introducing from SDBB. James, do you want to just introduce yourself there?
Hi, yes, my name is James Phillips. I'm a partner at SDBB Attorneys in Cape Town. I specialize in conveyancing and property-related issues, and I deal mainly with clients in the Atlantic Seaboard.
Thanks, James. And Dave, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, thanks Ross. My name's David Thompson. I'm also a partner at STBB, based in our Cape Town branch, and I'm specializing in litigation. So I'm on the litigation side of things. James is on the conveyancing side of things.
Kash, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Kasha Waters. I specialize in long-term residential rentals, and also I manage properties. I operate in the Atlantic Seaboard area, and my office is based in the waterfront. I've been working for SIF for almost 12 years.
Thank you. Eddie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Adrian Morberger. Thanks, Ross. I handle the sales along the Atlantic Seaboard, the luxury sectional title sales, running between Bantry Bay and Greenpoint, as well as the off-plan development sales. I've been at SIF for 13 years and in the industry for 17.
So you're a newbie. And then behind the SIF banner, we've got Rowena, who's just managing all the mechanics behind this. So thanks everybody for joining us today. So as we know, COVID-19 has had a massive impact on our lives, the global economy, the South African economy, but today we're going to talk about the impact on our property sector. When lockdown first commenced, it was very strict, as we all know, and it meant that the closure of our deeds office has been closed for quite a considerable amount of time. This has prevented us being able to put through registrations. This means that sellers have not been able to receive their funds off the properties that they have sold or were wanting to sell. It also means at one stage that new owners weren't able to take possession of their properties. And also it has restricted the movement of tenants. No tenants were able to move during the initial part of lockdown. So it really brought our sector to a grinding halt. At the moment, as a sector, commercial property is rated under level 3 to start commencement from a commercial perspective. Residential property is only geared to start again under level 2. We have been in discussions with government around that, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later and towards the end as to why we think that as a sector we should be operating at the moment. But despite these very strict restrictions on our country and in particular our sector, I think it's very interesting, and it's been, as we sit at the coalface of the industry, it's been very interesting to see the activity that's happened during this period of time. The actual deal flow hasn't gone to a standstill, despite everything else that's tried to bring it to a standstill. We as a company have seen great sales volume under the circumstances, specifically under the 5 million Rand price bracket. And we've even seen in the higher end, and Adrian, when we get to him, we'll talk about a very significant and well-sized deal that they've just concluded under lockdown. And we're going to talk as we go through what we're seeing both now in lockdown, and we will give you a little bit of a hint, although it's difficult, as to what we predict post-lockdown there as well, and we can discuss trends. And you are welcome to be dropping in questions into the Facebook page, and the panel will be happy to answer your questions and give you some real live updates on those as well. So I think I'm going to, on that note, hand over to James to explain to us from a legal point of view how property can still be trading, how it is that we are still concluding deals, and just the general background and legal background around that. James, so over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Well, the COVID regulations, as we all know, and you've mentioned it, Ross, state that real estate can only come back into, residential real estate can only come back into action at level 2, commercial at level 3. But when you read the regulations talk to the fact that real estate agents cannot travel to and from their offices, and they can't operate from their offices. So that's where real estate agents and the real estate industry cannot operate. But that doesn't prevent agents, sellers, and buyers concluding deals online, which is obviously what you're referring to, what's been taking place over the last month or two. So from a legal point of view, there's nothing wrong with doing deals, doing virtual viewings, if that's possible, where sellers take their own videos, or you make it subject to a viewing when the lockdown regulations permit. So that's how the law is working at the moment. And as you stated, Ross, and we've seen it at STBB, obviously the deal flow is way down, but there are deals taking place, and we are involved, and we've concluded a few over the last month, and it's happening. Just briefly, you've mentioned the deeds office. While you might have a few people who have a question on that. The deeds office did close again today because of a COVID case in the Surveyor General office, and we're hoping that they'll be up and running by Monday, Tuesday. Okay.
Thanks, Travis. Then also that covers the sales aspect. On James' point on the deeds office, since opening, it's opened and closed several times over the last couple of weeks. So we're trying to get as many of those registrations through. Besides the activity that we have seen in the sales space, we've actually seen a massive amount or an increased activity in the rental space. And that activity, we're seeing that people are either wanting to downscale, and you can do it maybe a little bit quicker than you can the sale of a house. People are either looking to downscale and save costs, or they're looking to upscale and maybe looking for something more comfortable to be living in. And to update us on what's happening in the front face of that, but Kasha will talk to that. But before we get to Kasha, I want to just ask Dave just to give us an update from the law as to where we stand, the latest Gazette changes, and just some feedback that we've been tackling over the last couple of weeks together.
Yeah, Ross, thanks very much. And I think just before we get on to the rental space, just also to remind people that obviously, during this time, and just to add to what James was saying, when you are concluding deals during this time, and if you want to conclude deals during this time, chat to us, and obviously approach C4 or STBB for assistance in advising on how to go about doing these things. But moving on to the rental space, Ross, it's been a very interesting time in the rental space in particular. And, there's a lot of talk about vis major and casus fortuitus and these kinds of things that are out there in the industry at the moment. And what we are finding is the general trend at the moment and what's going on in the rental space is that people are struggling financially because of lockdown, because of the regulations. There have been job cuts, there have been salary cuts. There's all these kinds of things that are creating financial pressure in the market, which is obviously having a knock-on effect to people not being able to pay their rent. So the biggest challenges that we're facing at the moment from a litigation perspective in the rental space is people not being able to pay rent. And that's across the board. That's not just from a residential perspective, that's also from a commercial perspective. We've seen a lot of this going on in the news where big retailers, are coming up against landlords regarding their rental. So it is challenging. And these are the kinds of things that are going to have to be dealt with in due course by the courts. Ross, as you know, we chat regularly regarding this kind of thing. And all we can do from an STBB perspective at the moment is to try and advise our clients as best we can on the law as it stands at the moment. But, unfortunately, this is a unique situation to South Africa. And we don't know how the courts are going to deal with this when the courts actually are up and running again, sort of from a full steam ahead perspective. So at the moment, we're sort of saying to everyone, it needs to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Each case needs to be dealt with on its merits. And we can only advise clients at this stage on the law as it stands, not on the law as to how it's going to be interpreted in the future moving forward. That is something that the courts are still going to do. But generally speaking, those are the biggest issues that we're facing at the moment. People are asking for remissions in rental. Your commercial guys in particular are asking for remissions in rental because they haven't been able, a lot of the commercial guys haven't actually been able to operate. So, this argument is developing in the industry is to say, well, I'm not legally allowed to work I'm not allowed to use the space that I'm renting, so why should I be paying the full rental? So these kinds of disputes are coming through a lot in the commercial space. And then obviously from a residential perspective as well, it's the same thing. You know, people are saying, I can't afford to pay my rent. And they're engaging with the landlord. They're trying to find ways to try and cover the shortfall, to make arrangements to pay for the shortfalls. But ultimately, Ross, I mean, I think the message that we need to get across to our clients and to the industry is that ultimately your rental agreements are going to be the governing documents. So when there are these kinds of disputes in the industry, you know, the people have to turn to their rental agreements first, and they have to see what the rental agreements say about these kinds of disputes and how it can be dealt with. And we're encouraging people to sort of apply the agreements, you know, to the extent that there are breach provisions, apply the breach provisions. And if a tenant needs relief, well, then, you know, the tenant must come to the landlord or come to the managing agent, and they must engage with you and they must say, I can't pay, and these are the reasons why. And then, you know, it's up to the parties to try, hopefully, come to an agreement with each other about how they're going to sort these things out. Lastly, just from an enforcement perspective, you know, if you do get to that position where you can't reach an arrangement with the landlord and the tenant, ultimately the question is, well, can I evict someone? At the moment, the regulations say that you can go to court and you can get an eviction order, albeit that order will be stayed until the last day of level 4. So essentially what it says is that you can only enforce the eviction order on the first day of level 3. That's what it says at the moment. How it's working out in practice, we are finding it very difficult in practice to have these eviction applications issued, new eviction applications issued. And in some instances, the courts are just refusing flat out to issue them, even though the regulations say that we can proceed with these applications. So it's very difficult out there from a legal perspective and from an enforcement perspective as well. Yeah, but once again, you know, each case is dealt with on its own merits, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're going into our third month end since COVID-19 hits in full force. I must say I commend the team. We've handled the situations that have arisen during each of these cases, treated each case uniquely, and thank you. I mean, Dave, you've been a great support through that process as well. It's almost been a daily discussion between us. So as I said in the beginning, the rental space has been very active at the moment.
Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Dave.
Ross, we just have 3 questions from a few members on Facebook.
Okay, I'm going to save them until I've just gone through Cash and 80, and then we will certainly start with the answering of questions, Ro.
Okay, perfect.
We're going to go over to Kasha, who is our rental agent. She's been at the coalface and front-facing a lot of what David has been mentioning. So, Kasha, you want to just update us as to what you're finding on the ground?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So if we talk about rental properties and the leases and rental property market, I need to say that even the week before the lockdown and the following 2, maybe 3 weeks, we're very busy negotiating between tenants and the landlords and making sure that actually our tenants can still pay the rent either in full or at a lower rate. And the landlords can, of course, receive the income and cover the costs. So that was all done for managed leases where myself and my colleagues and also rental accounts department and admin were very, very busy. And we managed to prepare definitely a few rental deferment agreements and also rental reductions. In a few cases, we had to also utilize a deposit to cover part of the rent. So that was all done for managed leases. In case of unmanaged, I can't say much because I don't have a control over those agreements, but I did have calls from my clients asking about what to do and how they can actually help their tenants, and I did advise them what can be done. But so far, from what I know from our accounts department, most of our tenants managed to pay the rent and stick to whatever agreement they had between themselves and the landlord. So that's a good sign. And then if we talk about, sorry.
We've also noticed, we've had a lot of clients increasing their request for managed leases because they want us to handle.
Because they don't know how long it's going to be. So of course they would rather have agent negotiate and making sure that the rent is paid on time. So I've had definitely a few inquiries from landlords asking about managed leases.
Just for our viewers so that they understand, for a managed lease, we handle all of that, A to Z. It's headache-free for you. And where some people originally wanted just a placement from us, they have now asked us to move into a managed lease scenario, especially under these circumstances. Sorry, Cash, keep going.
Yeah, no problem. And then if we talk about the activity on the rental property market, the first few weeks it was very quiet because people were not allowed to move. So of course we didn't receive many inquiries. It was actually very, very quiet. And the only inquiries I used to get, it was from the landlords who actually own furnished properties, either 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms, which were very popular on Airbnb, and now because it's not happening. So we've been doing a lot of listings and evaluations of those kind of properties based on either videos or pictures. However, when the government announced that people are allowed to move from the 7th of May to 7th of June, definitely there was lots of activities. And then now people are allowed to move anytime, even after the 7th of June. And the lease can be also signed anytime, not only before the 30th of April. So I am getting lots of inquiries and calls and WhatsApps asking for pictures and videos. So there's definitely something happening. We just hope that soon we will be able to physically enter property and then help people to actually find a new homes.
Thank you. Okay, Aids, you are obviously on the front face of sales. You want to give us an update as to what you're finding?
So thank you, Ross. You know, prior to lockdown, we were already in what we term a down market. You know, the residential property market and sales side is full of peaks and troughs, and we were already in that sort of trough of the market. Then we had the water crisis, which was about a year ago approximately, coupled with the Eskom issue, already into a down market. Then COVID hit and we didn't know what we were in for. So pricing had already come down substantially. At the same time that COVID came in, it was again the downgrade from Moody's and, you know, the Moody's downgrade. And again, we were hit with difficulty in the market. The first couple of weeks of lockdown, there was absolutely no activity whatsoever. And then it started to pick up substantially. You know, as agents, our jobs are quite hands-on. Our job doesn't just involve listing a property online and then leaving it there and hoping for hits and views to come through and for people to go, okay, from the photos, I'm going to buy this property. It doesn't happen like that. We have to interact with our buyers and sellers. We have to take our buyers through the properties and actually show them the live experience of the property. Obviously, with lockdown, we haven't been able to do that. So we've had about 6 odd written and verbal offers over the lockdown period of about 2 to 2.5 months now. But again, some have been subject to viewing, while others, you know, there's some educated buyers out there and they know the buildings, they know the sectional title. They don't necessarily need to see it per se. They need to see the photos, understand, be walked through the property, and then they'll put their offer in writing or verbally. The difficulty comes in that the pricing that we've been receiving, the offers we've been receiving have been substantially under asking price. And those sellers with the motivation to really move on, you know, not to, you know, it's about those 5 Ds, that motivation. Is there death, divorce, departure, debt, and are you time bound to sell your property? If those items are substantial, then there's a motivation significantly enough for the seller to accept not a cheeky offer, but a substantially under asking price offer. Unfortunately, on the Atlantic seaboard, you don't have too much of that. So we are having a problem between the asking prices, or at least the price that the seller is willing to accept, versus the offered prices that are coming in. And closing that gap is very, very difficult. We have managed to conclude now, in the last couple of days, myself and Brian have concluded what would probably be the largest sale during the lockdown period along the Atlantic seaboard, obviously waiting for 1 or 2 conditions to be fulfilled there. But there is interest, and the positive part is that the buyers that we've had have really come to the party in terms of not only saying, okay, I will wait till after lockdown to look at it. They want action. They want to put those offers in writing and verbally, and they are looking to purchase. There is time to buy. It is the time to buy now, and buyers are going to capitalize on that, for sure.
Eddie, I think you'll agree that at the moment, buyers are looking for value, especially not being able to access the property. They're shopping around value, and those sellers who do want to move their property need to realize that. I think it's also interesting because I've watched the deals that you've been working with. One of the trends that we've seen, and maybe you want to just talk about it, is that people are moving from upcountry, wanting to move down. So we're seeing semigration come back onto the table because of COVID. I don't know if you want to chat about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So originally, you know, when the water crisis hit, we noticed that semigration market sort of almost disappear. You know, the Joburgers were staying, the Pretorians were staying there, everyone was sort of staying put. Then that sort of cleared up, and now we've had a lot of upcountry buyers, Pretoria, Johannesburg, OFS, coming down, wanting to come back to the ocean, to the mountain. There's certain factors that draw people to Cape Town. Those tourism factors are really what draw people here. And there has been an interest for people to relocate to Cape Town on a longer, more permanent basis. And also, Ross, a big trend towards people wanting home offices or space for home office. I think what people have learned over the time is that, not to say they won't have these massive organizations and operations and office space, but the fact that we can possibly be more home-based in an office environment, people are wanting that. They're wanting, instead of a 2-bedroom apartment, for example, they now want the 2-bedroom with a study. So they're looking to sell their 2-bedroom and buy something slightly larger with a study, or the lock up and go factor, having that ability to work from home.
Right. Eddie, thank you. Thank you for that. I do think as far as trends go, that's one of the biggest things that we're seeing is that COVID has made people realize that they're not as linked to their businesses as they used to be. People are they're more agile and mobile as to what they can do and where they can position themselves. And like you say, they want to be down here in Cape Town. We've got the ocean, we've got the mountain, great stretch of real estate, the best, in our opinion, best stretch of real estate from Atlantic Seaboard to Cityville in South Africa. Not that we're biased. So also between both our renter and our sales teams, another trend that we've also noticed, and I think that's made it a lot more relevant for us as agencies, and as a large agency, a trusted agency at that, is that we have gone from people wanting to view lots of different properties to now wanting to view smaller amounts of properties. So it was like the Netflix where you go on and you've got all the content in the world. Now the agents need to spend a lot more time with you. As Eddie said, our business is not just about going online. We need to engage with you as a buyer. We need to properly understand your needs, and we need to match you to the correct properties. That way we can limit the risk to yourself by taking you into fewer properties, and limit the risk to our sellers. So our role in that regard is more important than ever before. So on that note, Ra, I see that there are some questions coming through. Do you want to lead the way and just guide us through those questions, Ra? And let's see if we can assist there.
The first one is from Fatima. Has the property valuations declined in Camps Bay since COVID-19?
Okay. David, no, I'm joking. I won't say. So it's an interesting one because I think that it extends beyond just Camps Bay as an area. That's a question that everybody's asking, is what's happening to the property values. It's very difficult now to guess, because it would be a guess as to what the property values are going to do, because the sales volumes have thinned out so much. So we would need to trade a little bit longer. And I think we would need to trade a couple months to get a good understanding of where the new market is. But we are expecting, and like Adrian's point, those sellers in this market who are saying no to especially a written offer, especially a cash offer, I would say to you, think twice about it, because there aren't many buyers in the market. And unfortunately, the impact on the economy is going to have an impact on the buying capacity of our country. So we do expect a drop in prices across the board. What that drop is will have to be seen in the coming months. But again,
I mean, Ross, if we look at the sales that have taken place in the last, like, let's say 3 months or so, some of the top end sales pricing has been 30% off asking price. But then in the lower end of the market, sort of at the 3 million mark, around that sort of pricing point, you're still getting pretty much, you know, it could be 10 to 15% below asking, sometimes only 5% below asking. So it's a difficult one to pinpoint. But from the experience, I would probably say that the higher the pricing point, the larger the differential between the asking and selling price would be in today's market.
While we're talking the pricing, Cash, as well, in the rental space, there's been a flood of that short-term stock that's come onto the long-term market. And we've seen a bit of pressure on the rental prices as well. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. I've done lots of valuations, especially for 1 or 2 bedroom furnished properties, because they can't be rented on short-term basis, and because there's so many of them on the market. Normally, the asking rate and, of course, what we're going to achieve, there's a difference between, I would say, 15, maybe 20%. But this is for the small properties. If we talk about bigger houses or bigger apartments, furnished or unfurnished, doesn't really matter. The difference is definitely much higher, I would say, in about 20, maybe 25%, even more. So, but we still actually managed to close some leases and get offers. However, they are, in most cases, definitely lower than the asking rentals.
But to both our landlords and our sellers, I will just also mention that we're sitting with a backlog of stock. We haven't been able to do viewings, but we also haven't been able to do photographs of new listings. So there is a lot of stock waiting to come onto the market post once the levels reduce there as well. Just for everyone to bear that in mind, for those of you who are sitting with me. Rose, thank you. Next question.
Next question. When do you see the Airbnb market rebounding?
I will. Do you want me? I'll tackle that, and Cash, you can see if you agree. So that's a difficult question. I think I could make a lot of money if I knew the exact answer to that, because it relies on a couple of things. We still need to see what's going to be included in the level 3 regulations. If indeed a domestic airline, because I think we're a long way away from seeing international airlines coming back into the country. If domestic airlines are allowed to continue to fly, I see that there are a lot of our national carriers that actually don't want to open, even if the legislation allows for it. And once domestic travel does open, we're obviously competing with a lot of stock and a lot of hotel stock, where you had a much bigger pool of international and domestic. Now they're all fighting over the same stock. So I think it's going to take quite a while until we see that bounce back. Kash, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I completely agree with you. As long as people actually are allowed to travel between provinces, it might come back. It will never be as active as it has been for the last year or two. What can be happening, some buildings may have also different rules. They will stop short-term lets because they don't want people coming in and out, because of course it's higher risk. So I'm not saying it will be happening, but some buildings might consider those kind of options, because I've been getting lots of letters from different managing agents where they actually don't allow people moving in and out, and they've got own rules. So it's quite difficult to get against those rules.
Okay, thank you. Ro, next question.
Next question is from Mr. Williams. What are the market conditions for Millie Point and the waterfront apartments, as well as Sea Point? And are you expecting an increase of stock purchase?
Ed, do you want to tackle the Sea Point part of that?
I'll go for that. There is a substantial amount of stock on the market currently, especially and obviously handling the areas running between Bantry Bay and Greenpoint. I'm not going to mention specifically, I'll leave Ross to talk about the waterfront and Millie Point, but my areas that I focus on, there is a substantial amount of stock. We're sitting with approximately 70 listings. And remember, we only handle the luxury apartment market, so that's over 4.5 million rand upwards. We're sitting with 70 listings at the moment, and the offers that I spoke about earlier that we had received had been on 6 different properties. The one we've concluded would be the 7th different property. So the stock is there. Pricing wise, you have to make sure the agent is giving you the facts. It cannot be a situation of those days where the agent that gave you the highest price will be chosen because they believe in the property and they agree with you on the price. Obviously, the seller wants the highest price they can possibly get, but there are so many factors that have to be taken into account now. And taking historical data and using that to base a value on these days is not sufficient. You need to take it month by month. I mean, there can be an extenuating sale that is astronomically amazing. That does not set the benchmark going forward. There are always those outliers. So it's very important that the agent is very much more conservative, because otherwise we're not going to close those deals. The buyers are in the pound seat. It's a buyer's market. It's simple as that. The sellers will sell if they are motivated.
I think that's spot on, Eddie. And just to talk about the question around the waterfront. So we've got different sections there around the waterfront, in that you've got the marina, which is 515 keys. So you've got a limited estate and a unique lifestyle there. And over the years, since 2013 to 2017, we saw a shift from majority of those properties were owned as second homes. And that kind of changed between 2013 and 2017. A lot of people who occupy those homes do so because they want the lifestyle that's being offered there. So the waterfront, even during the tough 2018 and 2019 years, has kind of maintained its value a little bit, but we've seen a massive drop off in volumes trading in the waterfront. Morley Point actually saw a bit of an uptick in volumes, also a lifestyle area. So as Adrian said there, we do have to just give it a little bit longer, because what has happened in the past doesn't really give us guidance into a whole new landscape that we're going into. Ro, thanks. Is there another next question?
There is. Are we finding that people are looking for rentals outside of the Atlantic seaboard to find homes in suburbs, or to find homes with larger outdoor spaces?
So I have spoken to my colleague. I was actually on a hangout yesterday with some of our other licensees, and there definitely has been also similar uptick and interest in going for outdoor space, having those living areas, and the importance of home. Okay, Ro.
Okay, and then just one more. Is it easier to rent out a furnished or unfurnished apartment?
Yes.
Well, I think both of them can be rented out depending on the price. If they priced well, and definitely we can make it happen. But because there's so many furnished properties at the moment, of course, the rent that we achieve will be lower. So it's still possible. However, the owner will have to be open to negotiate the rent. In case of unfurnished properties, I must say there's not too many of them. So actually, if I list, let's say, a slightly bigger cottage or a house, which is unfurnished, which I have done for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been getting lots of inquiries. So there's lots of interest, especially for unfurnished properties, because there's not many of them available. With furnished, of course, there's lots of them, but as I said, the rent will have to be lower.
Thank you. I've got a couple legal questions just for James and for Dave, whichever of you wants to jump in. Dave, maybe this one's for you with regards to just confirming the regulations have changed with regards to moving. Do you just want to give everybody the update as to where we are with moving? And also, while we're at that, maybe just let them know the permit requirement and how that works.
Sure, thanks, Ross. Also, I meant to weigh in when Cass was speaking about the short-term space, just to remind people that at the moment, the movement that's contemplated is a once-off movement. So unless you are traveling for business purposes and that business is an essential service, which would allow you to be traveling across borders, I'm talking about South African borders, within South Africa, then I don't think that you're going to be finding a space where short-term letting is going to be possible for those kinds of things, because the movement really contemplates a once-off movement. So, excuse me, just to sort of go through what the regulations are saying at the moment as we stand. It might change tomorrow. It might change in an hour's time. We don't know. But as they stand at the moment, what's contemplated is that the movement of persons and goods, where a person is relocating to a new place of residence, the movement is necessitated due to domestic violence, or a business is relocating to a new premises. Those are the 3 instances where you would be allowed to move on a once-off basis. Okay. And then insofar as what you'd need to have with you in order to get a permit to do these things, it's set out. So I don't know, Ross, if you'd like me just to read it verbatim so that I'm not misquoted along the line somewhere. So I think, yeah, perhaps let me do that.
I will just save you the legal so that it doesn't go over people's heads too much, but there is a form attached to the latest Gazette, which you take to your police station with the relevant lease documents. And it's actually a very simple process. I must say the police stations have been particularly swift with doing it. It's a painless process. So the actual moving itself and getting your correct documentation is not a problem. So yeah, that's.
So I think just to paraphrase what the regulations are saying, and just to repeat what you said, Ross, basically, in order to get that permit, you'd need your lease agreement, which shows, or 2 lease agreements, which shows the end date and the commencement date of your new lease. And then insofar as sales are concerned, just proof of transfer of ownership or proof of the sale, that should be then sufficient in order to enable you to get that permit. And then obviously in that permit as well, you would say who is moving with you. So your family, spouses, children, those sorts of things, aunts, uncles, cousins, twice removed, those kinds of things.
Just to clarify, because now that applies to the registrations that go through. So that means that new homeowners can move under those conditions as well, not just tenants.
Correct. New homeowners and new tenants, and the restriction that was initially in place up until the 7th of June has been taken away. So any business that's concluded during this period, as long as it's a new and as long as it contemplates a once off, that will be allowed.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. James, maybe you want to tackle this one, which we're seeing a lot now, where people are stuck at home and not close to printers and so forth. I need to sign transfer docs. May I travel to the attorney's office, or can I do this at home, either scan back to the attorney or drop the docs off?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Ross, what we're doing is the sale agreement obviously can be signed remotely at home and emailed or whatever, if possible. If not possible, let's talk about transfer documents first. Transfer documents, we are obviously allowed to give permits to buyers and sellers to attend our offices, and we can ourselves attend their homes to sign documents up. We're encouraging people to come here because we have protocols in place, sanitizing, we have screens up, and I think a lot of attorneys have done exactly the same thing. So we can do that. I wouldn't encourage people to sign documents themselves and get them dropped off. I wouldn't be doing that sort of thing. I think the documents must be either signed at home in front of an attorney, or the clients need to come to the attorney's office and sign the attorney's office. The deed of sale is a bit messier, I suppose, because if you don't have a printer, you've got a bit of a problem. But I think again, we are allowed to travel as attorneys, and what we'd have to do is, I suppose, we'd have to take the document to the client, or the buyer or seller would have to attend our offices, and I think that would be the same for other attorneys.
Okay, thanks, James. I see that we've got 1 or 2 more questions, and then I think if there's no other questions after that, we'll start wrapping up. Ro, do you want to just give us the other questions?
Okay, this one is from Laura Sandler, and she's specifically asked for Adrian, is there any interest from international buyers?
Thanks, Lara. There has been. It's certainly not where it used to be, and I think the general misconception of the amount of foreign ownership in South Africa is something that is very important to take into account. We get the question frequently when going into buy for mandates or speak to sellers. I'm happy to price my home at X because, with the exchange rate, perhaps we could get a little higher price from foreigners. There is a very, very small percentage of ownership in South Africa that is foreign ownership. Significant areas, maybe the waterfront, Clifton, those sorts of very top-end cosmopolitan areas. But, it's very important that we take into account that along the Atlantic seaboard, especially in the areas that I work in, it is a local buyer. It's either upcountry or Capetonian. It's the downscaling family. It's the lock up and go. It is not necessarily a foreign ownership buyer. And I think we need to, very importantly, when you as a seller, when you ask your agent, make sure they can give you the information on the statistics regarding the foreign ownership. Because if you're going to price your house or property with the intention of hoping to get a higher price from a foreign buyer, it's not a strategy.
Thanks, Ed. Ro, you had another question?
Yep. This one is from George from Seafood Stock. He says he's busy with a client in Johannesburg who has placed an offer subject to viewing. Any idea from your legal panel on when we think this could possibly happen? Would they be able to get a permit to do the viewing?
James, do you want to?
I mean, look, there are some attorneys that might do that, but I think you'd have to wait and see what the regulations say under level 3. I mean, we're all hoping, in answer to that question, we're all hoping that under level 3, the residential market will be able to resume, and therefore, and consequently, you will be able to do viewings. So I think in answer to that question, at the moment, it's really difficult unless the viewings can be done, virtually. But physical viewings really only come into play again when the regulations permit.
Thanks, James. Yeah, we are not doing physical viewings at the moment. We're only doing virtual. Our agents are not going out into the field, which is in line with the regulations.
Regulations, exactly.
Guys, thanks to everybody. Thank you for everybody who tuned in live. And I really thanks to the panel for putting this together. I think it's a nice opportunity for us to share some of the information and some of our experiences as they're happening. Looking forward, to James's point about being able to operate in level 3, we are hoping to see the country move down, and we're certainly hoping that the Western Cape will move down, and we're certainly hoping that the property industry, commercial and residential, will be able to operate under there. Now, understand that we have taken the security and the health measures very seriously. We were one of the first offices that actually closed well before lockdown commenced. We were very early in the purchase of our PPE to protect our team. Our team have been trained. They understand that the policy measures that we're talking about as far as being able to conduct our business safely and securely, both to ensure the safety of our team members, which is paramount to us, but also to ensure the safety of our clients. And we think that we can really do that quite easily. And given that it is such a large sector and such a high yielding sector and such an important need for a lot of people, especially now, who need to realize their asset or need to transact in their asset or sitting with it in the deeds office, I think it's very important that we as an industry are able to get back to work as soon as possible. We are here, always happy to answer any of your questions. You're welcome to contact any of us directly at any stage, and we're happy to guide you there through all of that. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks again to our panel. Wishing everybody well. Keep safe.
Keep safe.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Ro, will you